Sorry about that, babe.
Back in the college years, I played Pilotwings for the first time with my friends Kevin and Ricardo. We slogged our way through as much as we could, many struggles along the way where we eventually made it to the first helicopter mission, and that's where our journey had ended. The years that followed, there was always a thorn in my side. How could I let Big Al down like this? Well, in an effort to cover all of the SNES launch titles, previously covering and conquering F-Zero, it was now time to earn my wings. Pilotwings was developed by Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development, aka EAD, and published by Nintendo. Released in North America on August 13th of 1991, and was part of the SNES launch wave. Nintendo EAD also worked on great SNES launch titles such as Super Mario World and F-Zero. Pilotwings is a flight simulator game where you as the player attempt to earn various pilot licenses in the Flight Club through lessons in planes, skydiving, rocket belts, hang gliders, and finally helicopters. You're able to attack the crafts within the lessons in any order in which you please, sometimes even failing certain tasks and still being able to pass as long as your total score surpasses the lesson amount required by the instructor. The wonderful instructors of this game include Tony, Shirley, Lance, and the man, the myth, the legend, Big Al. The game was successful enough to spawn sequels on the Nintendo 64 and Nintendo 3DS, while also seeing re-releases of the original title on the Wii, Wii U Virtual Console, Nintendo 3DS, and Nintendo Switch Online. Graphically, Pilotwings was astounding for its time. Featuring a heavy display of Mode 7 graphics, Pilotwings is able to come off as futuristic for the time and helps convey the heights, speed, and angles of all the piloting lessons. I found the color palettes to be alluring, especially of those lessons in areas in the expert mode. I also very much enjoyed the headshot sprites of the instructors and their various reactions to either your amazing score, average score, or all-out failure. Pilotwings was a wonderful tech demo for the SNES from a graphical standpoint. Musically, the Pilotwings soundtrack and sound effects are solid. The sound effects help convey the weight of your crafts, and the soundtrack lends itself perfectly to the atmosphere of not only the game, but of the era in which this was released in the early days of the SNES console. I find the soundtrack to not only be incredibly catchy, but it's also helpful to keep you sane during those failed attempts that you will incur over and over and over until you get the hang of the lesson. Controls. The controls of Pilotwings can take a bit to get used to. Really, this comes down to the differences between the flight lessons. I found that the plane and the rocket belt were the easiest to grasp as far as speed, accuracy, and angles, whereas skydiving, particularly going through the accuracy rings, and the hang gliding where you don't have a consistent ability to raise your heights, they took a little bit longer to get the hang of. In general, I feel like the controls are solid, but the learning curve is real and kind of rolls off into the next section, gameplay and fun factor. I find that the gameplay of Pilotwings is incredibly addicting. I'm one that enjoys a challenge, and a challenge is what you will get with Pilotwings. By the way, Pilotwings employs a password system to pick back up where you left off. There's no battery backup or anything like that. Realistically, the game isn't super duper long if you're really good at it, but obviously being good at it takes some skill. Getting used to the aforementioned controls as well as the steady incline of difficulty as the lessons progress will yield many failures. But when you eventually triumph, it's an incredibly rewarding experience. All in all, I found the plane and rocket belt segments to not only be the easiest, but the most fun of the bunch. I will admit that as time has passed, I enjoyed skydiving more, but I felt like the learning curve was a bit steeper than the aforementioned craft lessons, with hang gliding being the ultimate learning curve, taking me nearly the entire game to get comfortable with it, and ultimately this was my least favorite event in the game. The helicopter missions feel a bit out of place compared to the rest of the game as well. Gone are things such as good timing, accuracy, so on and so forth, where the goal is simply just rescuing the captured persons, and that's the only thing that matters. So yes, that means you actually don't need to shoot missiles and gun down gunners in order to complete those missions, which is a strategy that I employed because otherwise, I felt like those missions were a bit cheap to deal with. In my opinion, the biggest difficulty spike of the game was Lesson 4 with Big Al, and to be honest, the expert missions which are unlocked after completing the first helicopter mission, I was able to breeze through them in one day in only a few hours of play. Much like F-Zero, Pilotwings is essentially a game built off to show the power of the then new SNES console. I felt like it did a wonderful job towing the line between wooing consumers as well as just being a downright fun game. I also wanted to mention that achieving the harder landing methods, such as landing on moving targets in the rocket belt segments, skydiving, hang gliding, they yield cute bonus rounds where you control various animals and are able to obtain extra bonus points, which if you actually nail these rounds, you could outright skip some events by obtaining the needed score faster. So it's a pretty cool little bonus, can help make the game easier as long as you're really good at landing, and it's this kind of borderline Easter egg stuff too. Overall, Pilotwings was fairly well received at the time it was released, as well as in the modern day. It's not a perfect game by any means, but I feel it's aged quite well, and it's more than capable of appearing on people's top SNES game lists. A wonderful use of Mode 7 graphics, nice color palettes, a variety of events, a soothing soundtrack, and good challenge far outweigh the negatives of some of the intense learning curves, the out-of-place helicopter missions, and overall shortness of the game, again assuming you're good. All things considered, I give Pilotwings on the SNES a 8 out of 10. It's a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that I went back to finally beat this classic title. The SNES launch wave was certainly filled with bangers. Also, special shout out to Kevin and Ricardo. This one was for you guys, we finally did it. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. If you want more Pilotwings content, check out the description or pinned comment below, or my long play with commentary and an unboxing of the game. Take care.